بعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Tonight's lesson instead of continuing on Fiqh al-Hasad series that we've been doing for months now, read the first 10 days. We're reading from Kitabi Lata'if Arif, the famous work of Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, Matarif al-Ma'arif. We're reading from the summarized version, page number 351. The author, rahimahullah, says, وَظَيْفُ شَهْرِ ذِي الْحِجَّةِ عَلَى مَجَالِسِ ذِي الْحِجَّةِ الله وسلم أنه ما من أيام العمل الصالح فيها أحب إلى الله من هذه الأيام، يعني أيام العشر. قالوا يا رسول الله ولا الجهاد؟ قال الله قال بنفسه وماله ثم لم يرد منه أحكم في فرض في فصله وفي فضله. وقد دل هذا الحديث على أن العمل في أيامه أحب إلى الله من العمل في أيام الدنيا من غير استثناء شيء منها، إذا كان أحب إلى الله فهو أفضل عنده. وقد ورد هذا الحديث بلفظ ما من أيام العمل فيها أفضل من أيام العشر، وروي بالشك في لفظة أحب، وإذا كان العمل في أيام العشر أفضل وأحب إلى الله من العمل في غيره من أيام السنة كلها، العمل فيه وإن كان مفضولا أفضل من العمل في غيره وإن كان الله. قال ولا الجهاد، ثم استثنى جهادا واحدا هو أفضل الجهاد. هو صلى الله عليه وسلم سئل قال من عُرِّ جواده وأهريق دمه وصاحبه أفضل الناس درجة عند الله. سمع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا يدعو يقول اللهم أعطني أفضل ما تعطي عبادك الصالحين، فقال له إذا يعطى فهذا أن العمل في الحجة مفضولة في وقت يتحب العمل في غيره ويزيد عليه بمضاعفة ثوابه وأجره. So Rajab talks about Dhul Hujjah, the month in general, and the 10 days within the month, the first 10 days specifically. And another road is the virtue of the days themselves. We're going fasting, prayer, sadaqah, just the time itself, the virtue of the days, special of the days. And then he talks about the superiority of working hard, doing extra supererogatory, voluntary in those days. So the famous narration, and that is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, that is collected by Imam al-Bukhari, in which the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, ما من أيام He says there are no days. ما من أيام على الإثبات. There are that obviously هذا فيه زيادة اهتمام. قدم النفي that. So many days in which deeds, virtuous deeds, are more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than these. The companions, as if they couldn't understand. كأنهم استشكلوا هذا الكلام. ولا الجهاد؟ كيف؟ العمل الصالح هذا الأل يفيد العموم، يفيد الاستغراق. تسبيح، صدقة أفضل وأعظم من الجهاد، القتال في سبيل الله والاستشهاد. استشكلوا هذا as if they didn't understand, or as if they other deeds because the word al-amal salih, good deeds, including giving someone a date, it's a good deed, etc. Fighting in the and the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam alayhim wal jihad fi sabilillah for one type. And hadith خرج بنفسه وماله ثم لم يرجع ذلك بشيء. That he returned he's someone who was slain, who died ذلك بشيء. خير inshallah. So this hadith here, he says, is that it proves is that these days and what themselves الأيام نفسها فضلا عن العمل فيها. انتبه، هناك فضل للوقت ذاته نفسه، الوقت نفسه، وهناك فضل للعمل فيها. He says, so these days here, or this hadith it proves, is that the time is most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a person to do deeds therein. من غير استثناء شيء منها, with no exceptions. And if it's ahab, if it's more beloved to Allah, then it's afdal. And that's a qaid, that's a rule that you can take and you can understand 100 ayat and 100 ahadith. 100 issues you can take from this one rule. If the word most beloved is mentioned, then it automatically means that the deed is best. The deed is best. Understand? The deed doesn't state that these are the best days or the best days. Beloved. It means that it is most virtuous. Alright? And you can apply that to what? We saw it in inshallah. Now, Hujjah, he says, this proves that these days and what is better than any other time during the entire year, even if the deed itself is inferior. So let's ask a question now. A person gives one date in sadaqah compared to a person who gives a box of dates in sadaqah. أيهما الفاضل والمفضول؟ التمرة ولا الصندوق؟ طبعا, of course. Let alone a box of fine dates, high quality dates, versus a person gave one small basic date. So giving one date, the date isn't of the best quality, is inferior, right? And the but he says giving the one date during the 10 days of Dhul Hujjah is superior than giving the what? The box. Everyone understand this? Yeah. We have mafdul is inferior, it's lesser, but is done during this time, just because of the time the deed automatically becomes superior. That's obviously, that's food for the thought, right? So, without is sad. Moving forward, he then says, كان جهادا واحدا هو أفضل. And then one type of during the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah can compare to, and that is using everything. And that أي الجهاد أفضل, which jihad is best? He said من عكر جواب من عكر فرسه وحصانه وأهريق, يعني طعن وضرب بالسيوف والرماح حتى سالت منه الدماء, يعني مات. He says, which jihad? He was asked, which jihad is best? Which jihad is most virtuous? He says, it's for your horse to be slain and for your blood to be spilled. Use your everything. Horse on the battlefield. There's nothing better and there's nothing more virtuous than that. He says, jihad, whether it be jihad, being wounded, surviving, whether not winning, to show once again is that an inferior deed can become equal, if not superior, to a deed based off of the virtue of the time. Moving forward, وقد روي في حديث ابن عباس هذا زيادة والعمل فيهن يضاعف ب700 وفي إسنادها ضعف. وقد أدل حديث ابن عباس على مضاعفة جميع الأعمال الصالحة في العشر من غير استثناء شيء منها. ومن الأعمال الصالحة صوم عشر ذي الحجة. وكان ابن سيرين يكره أن يقال صام العشر لأنه يوهم دخول يوم النحر فيه, وإنما يقال صام التسع. ولكن الصيام إذا أضيف إلى العشر فالمراد صيام ما يجوز صومه منه, وأما قيام ليالي العشر فمستحب. وكان سعيد بن جبير وهو الذي روى هذا الحديث عن ابن عباس إذا دخل العشر اجتهد اجتهادا حتى ما يكاد يقدر عليه. وروي عنه أنه قال لا تطفئوا سرجكم ليالي العشر تعجبه العبادة. He said there's another version of this hadith that states, and the version isn't the strongest, but it's it's mentioned, and that is good deeds during the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah are multiplied 700 times. 700 times. The hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas clearly proves is that the deeds in general are multiplied. Without on that, you can read up on that, you can reflect on that, you can ponder on that, you can spread that in your social media feeds, your text messages, your wife, your children, your husband. تذكير الناس بفضل هذا virtue of these days. Take advantage of these days. Use these days. Don't be a loser. Don't be a procrastinator. Don't wait till the last minute. Do something special during these days. He mentioned in another place in this book, just as good deeds are multiplied during virtuous times, bad deeds are oftentimes multiplied during virtuous times. So if you can't do extra good deeds during these days, then at least كف عن الشر والمعاصي في هذه الأيام العشر. Stop the sinning during these days. Moving forward, the next fasting during these days. Fasting during these days. Should you fast? Can you fast? Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he says, وَكَانَ ابْنُ سِيرِينَ, meaning Muhammad ibn Sirin, who's from the Salaf al-Salih, كَانَ يُكْرَهُ أو يَكْرَهُ أن يقال. Whenever the people said, I fasted the 10 days, I'm going to fast the 10 days, the virtue of fasting 10 days, he didn't like that. He didn't like for people to say that. And the reason being is that a person thinks and feels is that he's going to fast during the day of Eid, Yawm al-Nahr. And obviously the times in which you're prohibited from fasting is Ayyam Eid. Tashriq. You're not to fast. You're not to make voluntary fast on the Eid day, period. It's prohibited. So Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said a person shouldn't say that. Forward. He said that a person should only say, I fasted the 9 days. The 9 days. However, what's meant is fasting the 10, which are local to be or to fast in or on. Khairan, inshallah. Moving forward, we don't want to get stuck on that point. Fast. If you wish to fast, fast. Obviously, there's nothing equivalent to fast. As the Prophet ﷺ tells us, عَلَيْكَ بِالصَّوْمِ فَإِنَّهُ لَا مِثْلَ لَهُ كُلُّ عَمَلٍ فَإِنَّهُ لِي وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ. The virtue and superiority of fasting. That's in general. A lot of texts. According to some scholars, Hujjah. Let's move forward. He now brings up another very interesting point, which is standing in night during the 10 nights of Dhul Hijjah. And the last, by far, there's no comparison. And the first 10 days are better than the last 10 days of Ramadan, right? What is the ruling on praying at night? Qiyamul Layl, yani Tarawih. Making Tarawih at night during these nights. He says, for mustahab, recommended. Ibn Rajab states, the general night prayer that a Muslim is encouraged to make at nighttime, or are there special prayers made at night? Allahu alam. For him, qala mustahab. He says, and Sa'id ibn Jubayr is very like the Salaf al-Salih. He's a very interesting personality. And I would advise you brothers to read about his life, Sa'id ibn Jubayr. And there are many that a person can make Sa'id ibn Jubayr himself. And many Salih. And from that, Sa'id ibn Jubayr was of African, from Habasha. And Sa'id ibn Jubayr line in the lineage of slavery. His father, grandfather, someone from his line was enslaved Arabs from Africa. Yet and still, that did not stop him from becoming one of the greatest scholars of Islam and one of the greatest and most powerful students of Ibn Abbas. And when you read about many of the Tabi'een, you'll find about, one could argue most of them, kana min al-mawali. Mawla. Is that they came from the descendants of captives and slaves. So in the United States, other parts of the world, but we're just talking about the United States, America, it's a big problem. From many angles and aspects, the history of this country. Some people come to grips with it, others deny it. Some people are extreme and overzealous concerning the history and the legacy of slavery and emancipation. And with slavery in this country and other countries, but we're just talking about this country, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the truth, the lies, etc., all colors, all people have to deal with it. And there is the black, there's the dark skin, light skin dynamic, and very importantly, we must bring up, there is the indigenous Muslim and there is the immigrant Muslim. That's a fact. And there are many problems with regards to that dynamic with those two people. So as a Muslim, someone became a Muslim, I'm from Bangladesh or Senegal and migrated to the United States. Do they look down upon each other? Do they make fun of each other? Am I better than you? Are you worse than me? So on and so forth. When we talk about seeking knowledge, going overseas, I'm black, overseas and study, but because I'm black, I'm not African black, but I'm Negro black, American black. It's not so far that I can go. Because I come from the lineage of slaves, and Arabic isn't my first language, versus a black person, black skin, yani dark skin, coming from Senegal, coming from Somalia, in which, or they don't know Arabic. You guys are both studying in the language program, but because this is my lineage, there's inferiority and tribalism are all things that plague the masjids. Most of you guys choose to talk about it, discuss it, with it, try to remedy it, and other people try to sweep under the rug, say it doesn't exist. No such thing. Brother, what do you mean? Man, there's no racism in Islam, brother. But if you actually look at how people do with each other and treat each other and coexist with each other, you'll find it there. Once again, it's not a black-white thing. The indigenous thing. The indigenous people have problems. Mindset. And the immigrant brothers with the mindset. And from that is, if a person comes from a specific lineage, it doesn't mean that he is or isn't a thing in the future. That's the fa'idah. And we learn that from the life of Sa'id ibn Jubair and many other Salaf, is that they came from the lineage of slaves and they became great ulama. That did not stop people from teaching them. Understand this. Moving forward. I don't want to say no more. We've already said enough. Share the experiences right here in this masjid. When I'm talking about masjid first. Right here. Back and forth and over here. What's important is Sa'id ibn Jubair rahimahullah ta'ala was from the top students of Ibn Abbas in fiqh, in hadith, in tafsir. He's from the best of the best. And he was the narrator of this Ibn Abbas. And when the praise came in, he worked very hard. He was extremely diligent and performing prayers, praying, doing all types of virtuous deeds. And he said once, never put out lamps during the nights of the 10 days of the Hujjah. Like Ramadan. First thing you think about Ramadan is what? A crescent, stars, right? A candle, right? A lamp. That's the iconic symbol of Ramadan, meaning staying up at night. So Sa'id ibn Jubair said, keep the oil in the lamps, keep the lamps burning during those praying abundantly at night. قد دل عليه الله تعالى ويذكر في أيام معلومات إن جمهور العلماء. As far as the recommendation, the encouragement, the incitement to make an abundance of Allah's dhikr during these 10 days, then it is proven by Surah Al-Hajj verse 28. Allah says, وَيَذْكُرُ اسْمَ اللَّهِ, and for them, the slaves, the servants, to remember Allah's name, fi ayyamin ma'lumat, during well-known days. And most of the ulama say that these well-known days are the 10 of the Hujjah. So is that a Muslim who are more dhikr during these 10 days. And of course, in order to grow flowers and then keep those flowers, you have to prevent and protect your garden from weeds. And you have to purge your garden from weeds. So if you want to make a lot of dhikr, that means you have to stop and you have to minimize making idle talk, let alone foul talk. Everyone understand this? The two don't mix. You're not saying Allah, over cursing and swearing. It's just not going to happen. It's unrealistic. You're not going to make an abundance of dhikr while you're talking about fulan, 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 and fulan. Politician, actor, rapper, singer, This one, that one, fulan, and fulan. It's just not going to work. So growing your flowers, you have to keep the flowers free from that which is going to strangle the flower. Pests and weeds, you have to keep your garden clean. So to make dhikr and abundance, that means you have to turn down the swearing, lying, thinking for people, and so forth. من أعشار الشهور قد سبق حديث ابن عمر الموضوع من أعظم عند الله عليه يكون فيهن قال طرق في قوله تعالى وليالي العشر هي أفضل أيام السنة خرجه عبد الرزاق وغيره. وأيضا فأيام هذه العشر تشتمل على يوم عرفة وقد روي أنه أفضل أيام الدنيا كما جاء في حديث جابر الذي عشر ذي الحجة فضائل أخر غير ما تقدم فمن فضائله أن الله تعالى أقسم به جملة وببعضه خصوصا. قال تعالى والفجر وليال عشر وليالي العشر هي عشر ذي الحجة. هذا الصحيح والذي عليه جمهور المفسرين من السلف وغيرهم. ومن فضائله أنه خاتمة الأشهر المعلومات أشهر الحج التي قال الله فيها الحج أشهر معلومات وهي شوال وذو القعدة وعشر من ذي الحجة. ومن فضائله أنه الأيام المعلومات التي شرع الله تعالى ذكره فيها على ما رزق من بهيمة الأنعام. قال تعالى وأذن في الناس بالحج يأتوك رجالا وعلى كل ضامر يأتين من كل فج عميق ليشهدوا منافع لهم ويذكروا اسم الله في أيام معلومات على ما رزقهم من بهيمة الأنعام. وجمهور العلماء إلى أن هذه الأيام المعلومات هي عشر ذي الحجة ويختص عشر ذي الحجة في حق الحاج بأنه زمن سوقهم للهدي الذي به يكمل الحج ويأكلون من لحومه في آخر العشر وهو يوم النحر. وأفضل سوق الهدي من الميقات في الأيام المعلومات. وفي الحديث أفضل الحج العام فيكون كثرة ذكر الله في أيام العشر شكرا على هذه النعمة المختصة ببهيمة الأنعام أو بدين الحج وبعضها يتعلق بدنياهم. وأفضل الأعمال ما كثر ذكر الله تعالى فيه خصوصا الحج. خير إن شاء الله تعالى. Moving forward, Ibn Rajab states, or he talks in the next chapter regarding how Dhul Hijjah is the best set of 10 of all other months. And we've mentioned that already in general with regards to nights and days. And of course Laylatul Qadr is king or queen, the best, the most powerful. There's no Laylatul Qadr is there's no comparison to its virtue, but the other things over which there can be a comparison. Last 10 Ramadan, first 10 Dhul Hijjah. Everybody clear on this? Wallahu alam. Then the author, he talks about the excellence of these days again from Surah Al-Fajr. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the Fajr and He swears by the 10 nights. And what's meant by the 10 nights. And those 10 nights, or those 10 meaning these, the days of Dhul Hijjah. And he the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah are the last months of Hajj. Obviously Hajj is in 3 months. Most pilgrims, especially those who come from the United States or Western countries, Canada, UK, they only make Hajj and they only know of Hajj during 1 month. But in reality, in 3. And those months are Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 10 of Dhul Hijjah. How can a person make Hajj in Shawwal, يا أخي؟ قد تسأل وربما تتساءل كيف يحج الواحد في شوال يا أنت؟ كيف القيدة؟ والله ما سمعت بهذا. كيش يعني الحج على أنواع وأقسام. The types of Hajj. النسك على أنواع. ومن النسك There are some types of Hajj in which a person starts in Shawwal and finishes in Dhul Hijjah. فيصدق عليه أنه إيش؟ بدأ حجه. شرع في الحج في شوال. شرع في الحج في ذي القعدة كالمتمتع مثلا. المتمتع يذهب هناك يعتمر، ينتهي من أعمال العمرة، يخرج من الإحرام ثم يدخل. قد يقعد هناك، يجلس هناك من شوال إلى يوم التروية، إلى يوم عرفة. عرفت كيف؟ So in Shawwal, right after Ramadan. And those are the earliest times which a person is allowed to start his Hajj. Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 10 of Dhul Hijjah. And that's it. So therefore, these 10 days are the final of the well-known months that Allah talks about Hajj. Al-Hajju Ashhurun Ma'lumat. Moving forward. It says, these are the days in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded His servants to mention Him abundantly for the animals, for the life provided them with. Veganism will never go along with Islam. Period. It's impossible. Rather, a person who's a vegetarian, is going to get close to the edge. There's no doubt about that. Right? A person who only eats fish. What are they called? Who knows, huh? Pescatarian. He may also be close to the borderline. But veganism, a person who has the life, animal cruelty, plant-based, animals, leather, meat, milk, dairy, so on and so forth, is going to find a big problem with this. Allah Azza wa Jal commanded the pilgrims, commanded the Muslims to remember His name, to mention His name, to praise His name for what? Silk, wood, water, fruit, vegetables, nuts, grains, berries, ala ma razaqahum, for the animals, livestock. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells us in simple words here, we understand this, is that having these animals, eating their flesh, drinking their milk, so on and so forth, that's a what? That's a blessing. And obviously, with that aqidah, not only is it not a blessing, but they say it's a curse. And it's a cause of illness and sickness and disease and constipation and lethargy and violence and so on and so on and so forth. Right? So that's a big problem. And it's not just, I prefer to eat vegetables. Meat doesn't go well with my system. Or I eat meat every now and then, but I prefer to eat vegetables. Or I have an this country, in this farm, versus a person believing and saying meat is evil. Period. And to have a leather jacket is an act of cruelty. Period. And to kill an animal, to use it, and to benefit from it is savagery. How can that person be a Muslim? And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He clearly mentioned what He mentioned. Wallahu a'lam. Moving forward. Khairan inshallah. Then He talks about, once again, from the verses of the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, is when the pilgrims are carrying and bringing their animals. Not their vegetables, but their what? Their animals. And then He states in a hadith, Al-Hajj. He says the best Hajj is the Hajj in which the most blood is spilled. It's the best Hajj, meaning sacrificial animals. Khairan inshallah. And he says, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during these 10 days, mentioning His name, remembering His name, is showing your gratitude and your appreciation for the animals that you have been granted and endowed and gifted. Wallah. So we're going to stop here right now, bidnillahi ta'ala, and we'll save some time for questions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. We ask Him, the Mighty and the Most High, the Almighty and the Most High, for true guidance, true comprehension, true obedience, true observance, and adherence to His deen. And I ask Allah, the Mighty and the Sublime, to allow each and every you brothers and sisters to have a successful 10 days of Dhul Hujjah. May Allah accept your worship. May Allah accept your sacrificing, your offering. And may Allah Azza wa Jal make you successful in taking advantage of these 10. Wallahu ta'ala alam.